Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Sawickipedia. Today we're looking at a Haan steam mop that's just run out of steam. It literally will not turn on. Now this may also apply to other brand steam mops as well. So we're going to take a look at the fuses inside. Before you do that, obviously double check to make sure the cord is not broken or frayed anywhere. And obviously unplug the cord before you start pulling anything apart. But yeah, beyond that, we'll get straight into it. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just take this part of the handle off. And we'll take the container out. Now this particular one has about 8 screws that are going to need to come out. Plus we're going to have to take this bit off which holds the actual power cable itself. We just need a Phillips head screwdriver. Also remove this screw here, which basically just holds the mop head in place. Now that we've got all the bigger screws out, the other thing to do is to remove this cover for the power cord. Just need a smaller Phillips head screwdriver for this. And with that removed, you can get access to another 4 screws that are hidden behind that. So back to your bigger Phillips head screwdriver. Right, now with all the screws removed, you'll see that the front cover just comes straight off. Now, barring any obvious faults, such as components either darkened or burnt out, the first thing to do pretty much with any steam mop is to check the electrical fuse. Okay, so grab your multimeter and just put it on the ohms reading and just probe each side of the fuse. Obviously make sure before you even begin doing any of this that you've unplugged the appliance from the outlet. So the multimeter is reading 0.4 ohms, so that fuse is still intact. But if it wasn't, we'd simply take this board out. In this particular model, the fuse is actually soldered onto the board, so you'd have to unsolder the old one in order to solder the new one in. But with any fuse, always match the same values. Generally, if you do have to go out and buy a new fuse, always grab 2. Once you replace the first one, test the machine out. If it blows again, then you've obviously got a more serious problem somewhere. So pretty much pull the whole machine apart and wherever possible check all the components and obviously the wiring for any short circuits. But given that this fuse is okay, we'll move on to the second fuse, which is actually hidden underneath here, and it is a thermal fuse. So a little bit different to the electrical fuse. Obviously that when too much power flows through that, the fuse wire itself will basically disintegrate due to the amount of heat going through it. With a thermal fuse, I've got another one here that it's a bit easier to see. They work in a similar sort of fashion, but if the fuse goes over a certain temperature, the internal component will blow and it'll be the same as having an open electrical fuse. So we'll test this out. It does have a little cover over it, obviously to stop any short circuiting from the connections to the fuse itself. But here it is. Let's just test it out. So we should get a reading of 0 ohms, and this one is reading a completely open circuit. So in this case it looks like the thermal fuse is blown. Now this is likely just caused by the machine heating up just a bit too much. Maybe we've put hot water in the container itself and it's just created too much heat. But there could be a more serious problem with something like the thermostat here, or the heating element itself. So if the thermostat's faulty, it's obviously going to allow the heating element to just keep on heating, which will eventually blow the thermal fuse. In this case, we're just going to replace this thermal fuse. I've bought 2 more of the same rating. I think they're a 220 degrees fuse, a 214. We'll replace this, put a new one in, test the machine out. If the new one also blows, then we'll look a bit closer at the thermostat and the heating element itself. So we've just cut the old one out just so I've got a bit more room. Now, the reason this fuse is just crimped into place rather than soldered into place is because it's a thermal fuse. And generally solder melts at about 300 plus degrees Celsius. So if you go trying to solder it in, you're just going to blow the fuse in the process. So rather than do that, I'm going to cut these terminals off, strip the wire back a little bit more, and crimp new terminals back on. Okay, so I've got a couple of little terminals, and we're just going to crimp these onto the end of our wires and crimp the other side of the fuse into the terminal itself. Okay, so I ran into a couple of challenges, but it looks like the new fuse is in and all the exposed wiring is now covered. So we'll put it all back together and see how it works. So there we have it, our steam mop lives to steam another day. So as always, thanks for watching this Wikipedia. If this has helped you out, please hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the like button down below, and also feel free to leave me a comment. Thanks again, see you later. This is fucking fucked. So fucking annoying. Fuck you, you fucking thing. That's hot. Whew. Getting hot in here. Getting a bit steamy. That's enough of that.